Okay, just picture ancient Egypt at the absolute peak of its glory. We're talking about a truly unstoppable force, a civilization dripping in gold with monuments that scrape the sky and kings who are worshipped as literal gods. So here's the billion-dollar question. How did they lose an entire nation of slaves? I mean, what could possibly bring the world's greatest superpower to its knees? You won't find the answer carved into stone, but you will find it in a story that is echoed through all of time.
Yeah, you can bet the pharaohs didn't exactly advertise this story on their temple walls. But ancient texts tell a very different tale, an epic clash of wills. It's a story of divine power squaring off against human pride, and it would change the course of history forever. This, my friends, is the story of the Exodus.
And believe it or not, it all starts with one man, a man living in two completely different worlds. He was a Hebrew child who, by some wild twist of fate, ended up an Egyptian prince, only to become a fugitive, lost in a desolate wilderness.
That man's name was Moses. Imagine being raised in the mind-boggling splendor of Pharaoh's court, but all the while you're secretly haunted by the suffering of your own people. He was completely torn between two identities, until one single moment of white-hot fury. He struck down a cruel Egyptian taskmaster and had to run for his life, trading his royal robes for the harsh, lonely existence of a shepherd.
It was out there, in the total silence of exile, that something impossible happened. A voice, coming from a bush that was engulfed in an otherworldly fire, but somehow it never burned up. And with that voice came a divine summons, a mission that sounded absolutely insane. Go back to the one country that wants you dead and confront the most powerful man on the face of the earth.
Now, Moses' reaction wasn't some heroic, I'll-do-it moment. No, it was pure, totally relatable terror and self-doubt. Who was he? A fugitive shepherd? A guy who stumbled over his own words to challenge a king who was considered a living god? I mean, in his own eyes, he wasn't a liberator. He was just an outcast.
But he went. Moses returned. And when he and his brother Aaron finally stood in front of Pharaoh, this wasn't some quiet negotiation. Oh no, this was the first shot fired in a supernatural war, a duel of raw power, fought with signs and wonders right in the heart of the Egyptian throne room.
And get this, for a first test of strength, Aaron throws his staff on the ground and bam, it turns into a serpent. Pharaoh, he's totally unimpressed. He just summons his own court sorcerers and they do the exact same thing with their secret arts. For a split second, it's a stalemate. But then, Aaron's serpent lunges forward and literally devours the others. The message was unmistakable, a chilling warning. Your power is just an illusion.
But Pharaoh's heart only grew harder. And so it began. A systematic, terrifying assault on the very foundations of Egypt, its gods, its economy, its people. A sequence of 10 plagues, each one more devastating than the one before.
First, the Nile, the lifeblood of their nation, turned to blood. Then, the land was suffocated by a tide of frogs. After that, gnats, rising from the dust itself. Then swarms of flies, a pestilence that wiped out their livestock. Painful boils that tormented every man and beast. A supernatural storm of fire and ice raining from the sky. Locusts that blotted out the sun and ate every last green thing. And then, a thick, heavy darkness that you could literally feel, smothering the entire land for 3 whole days. It was just a relentless, escalating nightmare.
You have to think about the strategy here. It was brilliant, in a terrifying way. After each plague, Pharaoh would bargain, right? He'd promise to let the Israelites go, only to change his mind the second the plague lifted. But this was so much more than just brute force. Each plague was a precision strike. Turning the Nile to blood, that was a direct shot at Hapi, the god of the river. The plague of darkness? It was a total mockery of Ra, the mighty sun god. The point is, this wasn't random chaos. This was a systematic takedown, designed to prove that the gods of Egypt were completely powerless.
People have been debating this for centuries. Was it just a bizarre chain of freak natural disasters, all happening one after another? Or was it something else entirely? Let me know what you think down in the comments. And while you're there, if you're enjoying this deep dive, make sure you subscribe to Scripture Saga.
You know, after that plague of darkness, Pharaoh's patience just snapped. He looked Moses dead in the eye and delivered a final fatal threat. A line had officially been crossed. The duel was about to reach its terrifying climax. There was one last plague coming. And this one, well,
This one wouldn't be an inconvenience. It wouldn't just be an economic disaster. This one was personal. It was going to strike at the heart of every single Egyptian family.
And then, at midnight, a cry of pure anguish rose up and echoed across the entire land of Egypt. From the palace of Pharaoh himself all the way down to the dungeon of the lowest prisoner, the firstborn in every single Egyptian household was gone. There wasn't a house where someone wasn't dead. That was the blow that finally shattered Pharaoh's pride into a million pieces.
Broken and utterly defeated, Pharaoh didn't just let the Israelites go, he practically begged them to leave. But as this huge nation of former slaves marched out, his grief quickly curdled into pure rage. He'd just lost his entire labor force, the very engine of his empire. And so, the greatest chase in history was about to begin.
And we're not talking about a small group of people here. The text says there were about 600,000 men on foot, and that's not even counting the women and children. This was an entire nation on the move.
So Pharaoh gets his elite force together, 600 of his absolute best chariots, and he corners them, pins them against the sea. So how does this massive, frantic crowd of refugees, with their backs to an impassable ocean and the world's deadliest army closing in fast, how do they possibly survive?
What happens next is just one of the most cinematic moments in history. That pillar of cloud and fire that had been leading them, it moves to their rear, becoming a wall of darkness to the Egyptians. Then Moses just stretches his staff out over the water, and this powerful east wind starts blowing. It blows all night long, and it carves a path of dry land straight through the middle of the sea. I mean, we're talking about literal walls of water on both sides. The Israelites walk through, and just as the last one steps onto the far shore, the Egyptian army charges in after them. And then, the walls of water just collapse, swallowing the chariots, the horsemen, the pride of Egypt, gone, forever.
But freedom from slavery was only the beginning. The escape was over, sure, but the real journey was just getting started. Their final destination was a place of divine appointment, a trembling mountain deep in the heart of the Sinai wilderness.
Out in the barren desert, just surviving was a miracle in itself. They had no food, and the people started to despair. And then, every morning, this fine, flake-like substance appeared on the ground with the dew. They called it manna, which literally means, "What is it?" This mysterious bread from heaven would be what sustained them for the next 40 years.
3 months after their incredible escape, they finally reached their destination, Mount Sinai. But this wasn't some peaceful sanctuary. No, the mountain was wrapped in a thick cloud, shaking violently with thunder and lightning, as smoke poured from its peak like a massive furnace. It was a scene of just awesome, terrifying power.
And from the fire and smoke, a voice called out to Moses, reminding the people of everything they had just seen, of their miraculous rescue. They were brought here not just to be saved, but to become something new, to become a nation, to receive a law, and to enter into a covenant, a sacred agreement with the very power that had set them free.
So Moses ascends into the cloud to receive the foundation of that new law, the 10 Commandments. But he's gone for 40 days and 40 nights. Down below, the very people he just rescued, the people who witnessed all those unimaginable wonders, they start to get restless and afraid and dangerously impatient. So what do you think happens when a newly freed people are left to their own devices? Their response is going to be one of the most shocking and infamous moments in this entire saga. To see the giving of the law and the wild rebellion that happened right after, make sure you subscribe and turn on those notifications. You are not going to want to miss what happens next.